Hello, this is Arielle in Santa Fe, broadcasting in March 2015 on the final drumbeat, the seventh drumbeat or the seventh square of Uranus and Pluto. We've been having these squares since 2012, and many of you have been following the newsletters that I've been writing about the squares, the 7 drumbeats of change with Uranus and Pluto interacting at this time, 7 exact times. And if you haven't been following it, and even whether you know astrology or not, you're bound to be asking what has been going on. It hasn't been a quiet, peaceful, or restful time. These are 2 very change agent type planets, change agent Uranus and transformational planet Pluto, clashing swords, confronting us in very direct ways in 2 cardinal signs which have to do with how do we move forward. If you're an air sign or mostly air, you've probably been fraught with some indecision about that. If you're fire, what's my direction? Water, I'm emotionally confused. What do I do with that? And earth, it's about roots or security or upheaval of that. So whichever way you're dealing with it, you're probably dealing with both the urgency of Uranus to break away from the old patterns and to begin anew and to lay new foundations, and also the resistance of Capricorn, of Pluto and Capricorn, to sort of keep things the way they are. Maybe you're feeling it in your home or your relationship, your health, your family, your job, attitudes or patterns, but anyway, it is a message. Uranus and Aries especially is really a message of personal enlightenment. And we are being empowered right now by this planet, and both planets really. It's a paradigm-shifting pair. Every time they've been together before, like the last time they were together when they started their cycle that we're in now, we're 1/4 of the way through the cycle now that they began in the 60s. And they were 3/4 of the way of the old cycle back in the 30s. And you can keep going back through history and find periods where that decade that these 2 planets came together in whatever way seemed to be wild and confrontational and noisy and intense. And in other words, the masses were stirred up. The masses were restless, as you might say. So let's look at the signs for a moment. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, who in Greek myth was Kronos, Father Time. Father Time, the traditions, time-honored traditions. And Capricorn likes to hang on to those time-honored traditions. Capricorn's also the rule of law, and I'm the authority here. I'm in charge. I have the final say. So there is a resistance to new things coming from outside unless Capricorn realizes that it's something that really has to happen. Uranus is in Aries, and Aries is a sign ruled by Mars, which is like the soldier, the young buck, the young hero, the young warrior. Think of the Greek myths, Greek heroes like Theseus or Jason, who are given the mission to topple the old structure, to tear it down, and to bring forth a new paradigm, ignite a new spark to begin anew. And if not topple them completely, certainly tweak them. So Uranus is like chipping away now at a very rigid structure in Capricorn, and it's meeting resistance. And we find this everywhere. We find that the old systems are failing us. It seems like in every area of life, the old systems are failing us right now, and they don't seem to be working. But there's such a resistance, and maybe economically we are challenged to find ways to let them go completely, but keeping them is actually more costly than investing in letting them go and trying something more streamlined. But the new paradigm energy of a Uranus-Pluto time period in history. And certainly I want to pay homage here to Richard Tarnas, who has written and spoken very much about planetary cycles of change, or planetary cycles of archetypal emergence in history and the things that have gone on. And he has written extensively about Uranus and Pluto, but so I do recommend you checking that out. But at the same time, all the astrologers have been pointing back to the 60s, the 1960s, and the conjunction of when these two planets began. But that's when the cycle we're in now began. We're at the 90-degree square at this point, and you could call this the progress report. The first quarter square is like the progress report. So you would revisit issues in the collective, at least, that were popular, or really big, bold statements of the time of the 60s, and then look at them now to see, where have we gone? Where have we come? And of course, we could look at the 60s as a very loud and crazy and wild and chaotic time, very intense as well. It was exciting to a lot of people, and it was threatening to a lot of people. We had the anti-war movement, of course, was probably the loudest thing going on. We also had the civil rights movement, women's rights, gay rights. We heard the Earth Mother, Uranus and Pluto connected in the sign of Virgo, which I consider home to the Earth Mother. It's Virgo, the goddess, the Earth Mother, Demeter, Gaia, and how she takes care of the species on the earth and how she tries to protect them and keep them from going extinct or being poisoned or being killed or being injured. And so it's like this is a revolutionary time to bring those ideas back into the forefront again. And when Uranus is involved, there usually is a very loud cry from the groups that need to be heard. And so if we look at civil rights, where have we come? Let's just look at this last year or two with all the shootings, with the protests, the demonstrations, all the things that are going on with that right now. So basically, its time is now again to be looked at and to be given new direction. We, of course, had women's rights, and women have pretty much accomplished leadership in almost every field that there is since the 60s. They may not be getting paid as well as their male counterparts, and many of them will say they do twice the amount of work for half the pay, which certainly still needs addressing, but they are visible and powerful and in charge in a lot of places now that they were not before. In gay rights, the Stonewall event happened in the late 60s, and basically they were carting people off to jail. And now in this current cycle of Uranus and Pluto, we basically have many states that have legislated for same-sex marriage, and more to come. And of course, there still will be resistance to all these things. The old order still is going to try to hang on and resist as much as they can against the tide that is turning, but the tide is turning in the way of these issues becoming, them having their say, them having their rights, human rights, animal rights. The food movement, look at food, look at the drug industry, look at the food industry and the environment. Back in the 60s, the environmental questions that were being asked about how is our food being grown, and these mega monster corporations like Monsanto changing the formulas and destroying the soil and the crops and things like that. The GMOs, that's a big issue right now. The drug culture of the 60s, again, people being thrown in jail left and right for possessing a very, very minuscule amount of marijuana. And today, in this current era of Uranus and Pluto, not only have many states legislated for medical marijuana, but some for recreational marijuana, and more to come. Contrast that to the 60s when people were being arrested for it. Today you can walk into a dispensary in almost any state that allows it and order something like a gluten-free vegan marijuana brownie. So, yeah, I always get chuckles with that. So in some ways we have come a long way. In other ways we still have a lot of work to do. But it's sort of like if we look at this time as a progress report against the things that started to come up in the 60s, we see that original configuration has resulted in some significant progress here in the teens here of the 21st century. Only this one is as clashy and confrontational as the one in the 60s. Has been as well. I think in the bigger picture, if we look back at this time, in a future time in history and look back at this time, we will feel that this has been a time of the collective shadow really being exposed. Exposed in a way that, I don't want to see that, I don't want to look at that, or in a way that says, are you kidding? We've got to do something about this. But Pluto representing the collective shadow, Uranus representing the breaking through of it, the bringing light to it, the shining the light on it. And that goes along with secrets. Everything that's been hidden and underground and kept protected by Pluto is now, with Uranus out in the public eye, exposed. You're being filmed whether you know it or not. There could be a camera at the bottom of your toilet. Who knows what's going on these days? There are cameras everywhere and secrets being exposed everywhere, and shocking, outrageous times that seem very out of balance right now. Very, very out of balance. But the metaphor of the film, actually, that comes to me for this time period right now is The Empire Strikes Back. It came out in 1980. It was the second of the Star Wars trilogy of back then, but now it would be considered the fifth of the series. So here we had the Empire, ruled by Darth Vader, and represented here by Pluto and Capricorn. And then we had Uranus and Aries, symbolized by the Rebel Alliance, led by Luke Skywalker. And how could Luke Skywalker and his team, especially with Han Solo, which was a very good matchup, this Rebel Alliance, how could they possibly battle this giant enemy force, which consisted of massive armies, technology, war machines being pumped out daily by Vader's evil empire? Sound familiar about today? How does one deal? How does the young warrior, how does the young Uranus and Aries change agent deal with this? And in fact, it's not until Luke Skywalker begins to train with Yoda, an enlightened being, such as his master Obi-Wan Kenobi was, that he is really helpless against such forces. And it brings to mind here that Obi-Wan and Yoda, energies like that, beings like that, they're shamans, they're the master teachers, the enlightened beings who are in the shadows now, who are there waiting for us to connect with them. They're there to help us in our quest right now, in Uranus's quest anyway, to expose the collective shadow and confront the dark side. And then go from there. We confront it, and then how do we confront it and simultaneously defeat it? Or what do we do with it? So that's really the message of these times. Everything seems outrageous. And note the word rage inside of outrageous. It makes us feel rage to witness some of the things that we're witnessing at this time. But we do all have the time, the opportunity right now to awaken to the many benevolent forces of light and bring the light into the darkness, as Uranus is asking us to do in a collective way right now. We cannot keep things in the shadow. Carl Jung said that about the collective shadow many, many years ago, that, we have to confront it, we have to acknowledge it. But I think the best way we can do that is by looking at our own shadow and confronting our own individual shadow, and then as a group being able to look at the collective shadow and deal with it. After all, there is a law of the universe that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, Newton's third law. And we have the darkness out there now. It seems to be dark, but we also have a lot of beings of light. And that's my favorite thing about this time period, is the idea that we have enlightenment available, that we are becoming so connected. Those of us who are waking up very quickly and connecting and of one mind and of really, really united on certain fronts, and we have available this, this amazing type of information and inspiration available to us now. Everywhere, the technology is just, rapid advances in allowing us to, the good sides of the technological development have, given us tools to use and more information to become aware of. According to Krista Gerard, a family constellation therapist, the ancestors are waiting for this global transformation to occur. Now, with Uranus, there's the element of surprise. There's always the element of surprise. And so we think we're going down one road, and boom, here we are on another. In fact, on the 7th Drumbeat, that happened to me personally. I'm supposed to be in California right now delivering this lecture, and instead I'm in Santa Fe broadcasting it from here. Surprise. But we how do we deal with all the sudden surprises that Uranus is dealing us right now? I think we can't just be completely up in the air and rootless and waiting for, we know that, okay, we can't really make definite plans, and so we have to sort of be flexible because Uranus is activated right now in a big way. But I still say make the plans. I still make the plans and go along as if we're going to complete what we planned and we're going to go through it. But being aware that, hey, surprises could come up, changes could come up. Things are going to be tweaked right now. Also, many of you know I've been working with the star of Venus and the star points, the 5 star points of the star of Venus that are transiting through right now. 2 of the points of the star, one of them's in Aries and one's in Capricorn at this time. So they are actually, the Venus star itself has 2 points pointing to these signs of great influence right now of our time, Capricorn and Aries. So it is bringing the love, the heart connection, the healing to these signs. I also feel like we're in the heart of the revolution, and we're also in the revolution of the heart. We are joining our hearts together with our minds to solve the problems we are facing at this point, and being a more compassionate species and learning to become a more compassionate species. And in fact, I think we will look back at this time as a unique period in history and even in our personal lives that offers us opportunities like the 60s did to awaken from a certain kind of sleepiness and lethargy, to stand up and be noticed, and to notice what's going on, and to take action, and to take action in your own lives to move forward. So however you're moved to take action, do it. I might say that where do we go from here on the current drum beats? Uranus is only halfway through Aries at this time, and Pluto's only halfway through Capricorn. In fact, this last drum beat the square is happening in exactly the middle of the sign, 15 degrees. So each of them have 15 more degrees to go. And Uranus will remain in Aries until 2018, Pluto in Capricorn until 2024. And I think the Capricorn, because it has so much to do with leadership and politics and the government structures and all that, Pluto, I think the political system is slowly committing suicide right now, and if it doesn't do something to revive itself, it's really it's kind of in deep doo-doo at this time, and getting deeper as we go along. And it's being threatened by Uranus too, as far as all the counterproductive mindset that is interfering with getting anything to happen, anything to progress forward. This Aries Capricorn square is very intense. It's going to take a lot of force to just keep it moving. And it's up to us. Uranus in Aries is up to us individuals to make those changes, to keep, to unite together, to be a force to reckon with. But I think in the years to come, we will be solving the problems that have really been pinpointed in the time of these 7 drum beats from 2012 to 2015. Whatever has really engaged us in a big way, it's like in this next decade, as we continue to watch these planets continue through those signs, we will see when it's not so in our face, the squares aren't so in our face, when we have time to step back and look at it a little bit, get some objectivity on it, we'll be able to maybe move forward on some of these issues in a more, in a gentle and more compassionate way. Stay tuned. There are good things still to come. The reason I had been wanting to be involved in this drumbeat ceremony in Ojai, California today, which Tony Khalife has been faithfully executing since the first drumbeat. Thank you, Tony and friends in Ojai. To beat the drum in a rhythmic way, in a gentle way, in the background to Uranus and Pluto, to guide us through these transitional times in a gentle and loving and peaceful way. And so, for those of you in Ojai today, thank you, Tony. For those of you elsewhere, you have your own version of your gentle drum beat, whatever sound you want to make to the cosmos, whatever ceremony you would like to perform. Yes, do it. Because in the coming decade, we still have the reverberations. It's like these Uranus-Pluto drum beats have been the sound of a very large bell clanging. But once it stops ringing, the sound still reverberates its echo for some time. And I think it certainly will be for the coming decade. More to come. And I will sign off now. Namaste.